game planning, pitch movement, health, and of course, analytics. New York Mets relief pitcher Trevor May joins this week's show to talk about these topics. Plus, we'll have some fun with bullpen trivia and a supersized mailbag. Beat the Shift is next. Welcome to another episode of the Beat the Shift podcast, presented by Fangraphs. I am your host, Ariel Cohen, and with me as always, Ruvain Guy. How are you, Ruvain?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
Doing pretty good. How's your off season for you thus far?
It's been very busy trying to rehash everything that went right and went wrong in fantasy-wise, and also what went right and went wrong with my favorite team and our favorite team, the Mets.
Yeah, well, speaking of the Mets, we've got a great guest on for today. He pitches for the Mets. He has pitched 7 seasons with the Twins and the Mets, to be specific. He has accumulated 30 career wins, 11 saves, 450 strikeouts in just 378 innings. Last season, he had just a 3.21 SIERA, our favorite ERA estimator, and a 15% swinging strike rate, a career-best O-swing of 34%. Welcome to the show, Trevor May. How are you, Trevor?
I am great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, our pleasure. And, before we get in the show, just a little bit about you. What has been the highlight of your career thus far?
Highlight of my career?
Yeah.
Probably making it to the big leagues was the number one. It's funny that we were just talking before the pod about YouTube and doing YouTube videos, and actually my next one's on this. The highlight of my career so far, I would say, there's a lot of them. I reference a big kind of I'm gonna stay in the big leagues moment as being maybe a career turning point, if you will, where my rookie year did not go according to plan in my mind, and you guys being statistical guys view. I mean, I'm sure you've seen them, but if you were to look right now, you'd be like, wow, yeah, statistically not great either. And there was a point, I think it was my 6th or 7th start, and I'll never forget it. I had a pattern of behavior in the 4th or 5th innings of every start where I would just kind of, if I was throwing well, I would kind of, that's where the wheels will fall off a little bit. I give up a 3 or 4 spot, a crooked number, if you will, and then kind of shorten my leash a lot and not really go much deeper into the game. So as a starting pitcher, if a guy's going 4 2/3 every time, now me being a bullpen guy for the last 4 years, I know how angry that made me. So I can only imagine what it was like for the bullpen guys when I started. They're like, well, we got to cover 5 innings tonight, guys. Trevor's starting. So that had been the kind of the pattern. And then the 7th or it might have been the 8th. Pitching against the White Sox in against Chris Sale. We put up a 4 spot against him up early, so we were up 4-0. And about the 4th inning, wheels started to fall off a little bit again, and they scored a run, and then they scored another run, and I had no outs, and guys in 2nd and 3rd, and it was 4-2, and I'm beating Chris Sale, and I'm like, you just can't give up. You can't do this when you're facing that guy. Like you can't, not in a day where you get him. So I'll never forget it. Andy came out and talked to me, and Trevor Plouffe met us at the mound, and he said, hey. Basically, like, this can either go the way that it's always goes, or you can quote unquote sack up and get the job done here. And I believe something clicked. I was like, this is a turning point. I can't continue to do what I was doing, and I need to find a way to limit the damage here. And this kind of I don't know, something slotted into place in my head. I believe I struck out the side after that to get out of the inning, and it ended up throwing 6 innings for the first time in my career, getting that win and striking out 10. So I set like a length and strikeouts, and like it ended up being my best start of my career so far, and I just really distinctly remember that moment. So I would say, like, in my mind when I answer this question, at least until now, that is a major point in just my development as a pitcher, and something that kind of gave me the confidence that I was a major leaguer and that I belong there. So it's always going to stick out in my mind as one of my favorite moments.
Wow, no, that's a great story of perseverance and how you're well. First of all, you had 4-run spot against Chris Sale. That's always got to help, right? And you're able to really take what you can and say, you know what, I'm going to get the job done, and that's a fantastic that's fantastic there. And wanted to talk today about some game planning. Aside from physical training, aside from all the lifting weights and regiments and exercise, how do you in general prepare for games? And in general, do you say that preparing for a game is more about playing to your strengths, or is it more about studying the other team and playing to their weaknesses?
I think that is it's very relative. It depends on that the second part of your question there, the playing the strengths, playing the weaknesses, and I'll start there. I definitely play to my own strengths. That is where I default to. So if I don't know a lot about a guy, and then my information that I have, for example, a guy that was in the lower minor leagues for recently and kind of blew up and came through, which has been the case, especially with the COVID season. There's just not a lot of information on a lot of these guys coming up because they were in low A and they don't have a bunch of advanced analytics and a lot of heat maps on them and stuff. So whenever those guys are kind of in the running, it's definitely just 100%. Hey, here's what I do. Here's what I do well. If there's nothing glaring here that says they're really good at hitting fastballs up, then I'm just gonna go with it. And
Right.
and then when you go to a guy like we'll use the holy grail of guys that you gotta kind of go pitch by pitch with, and Juan Soto. It's like there's no, or a Freddie Freeman or a Ronald Acuna or even an Ozzy. They're at this point
No
now.
Bryce Harper there. He just won the MVP.
Or Bryce Harper, right? And I'll throw like these guys for me are like Devers, Harper, like the lefties with very little like holes in their swing,
Right.
Or don't swing and miss a lot in general. Those I'm a swing and miss guy. I know that's my major strength. I think that's the first thing they would put. They would put Trevor May dash swing and miss guy in my scouting report, and so I have to rely on that because that's the type of pitcher I am. And when I go and look at a guy or look at information on a guy, heat maps, what they do well, what they hit the hardest, and how well they do against pitches that are comparable to mine and where they hit those pitches. I game plan guys with no real holes, which pretty much everyone has some sort of big hole that you can exploit to an extent. Guys like Devers and Soto has nothing. There's no like, I'll go to this. He'll go with me, and I might be able to get him to swing and miss once at this. That he doesn't have that even. It's like you get 0-2 on him, and you feel the exact same way. So those guys, you have to read the at bat and stay with the thing that you're most confident in that day more than anything, because it doesn't matter if it's your strength or weakness. He doesn't care. So. There's only, there's one of those guys in every lineup, and being a guy that's going to face, hopefully get 3 outs in a game, you got to find a way to not let him beat you. And so I'll basically have a plan in my head, like I'm going to stay with these two strongest pitches, usually slider, fastball, and if they're not super strong on changeups, I'll be like, we will hold this in the back pocket, but we will only use it when the other two have been like, it's going, the AB is going long. We got to start busting out everything. Like that is generally how it is. But I would say, that's how you like whatever gives you the conviction, and you learn that over time. And it's always changing. Like every time I get new teammates, for example, I start to rethink how I'm approaching things, because sometimes you just slot yourself in, like you assume stuff about yourself that may necessarily not be true. You add a weapon that you haven't been thinking about, that hasn't been slotted into your game plan at all ever, and you're finding ways to make that the focus, and you have to make those adjustments. And talking to a guy like Seth Lugo, for example, that guy, we get to the same kind of endpoint, like what we do really well against what they don't do well, but we do it completely different ways.
Right.
So he taught me a lot about that, or about the way he went about things, and I was able to take a few things here and there from him as well. And it's always interesting talking pitching with him, because we're so different and so similar at the same time.
And you actually mentioned in a recent video that your goal is to throw certain pitches in certain areas. Does that change when you're trying to construct a game plan versus a certain team?
Yeah, so I would say here's the interesting thing about that, and I think that this is a very big distinction to make. Though that I call it the spots. It's not just like you basically create a default template of yourself. You create a map of, if I'm ideally, what do I want my heat map to look like? And because you know what pitches you throw the best and where to throw them generally when you're in the major leagues, like generally. And young guys who I can't answer that question very clearly. Like the first thing you need to do is answer that question clearly. Who are you? Like, what are you trying to do? And it's funny because I had a very this very clear conversation with two guys this year, Joey Lucchese, before he went down with Tommy John, and Anthony Banda. And when he was with us, he was only up with us for about 8 or 9 days, but he was talking to Seth and I about, like, because he wasn't used to pitching out of the pen. He's like, how are you guys preparing? Like, what are you trying? What do you know before you're going in? Like, how are you going to attack guys? And basically, I just said, hey, man, spots, you have your default settings. What if you had to get $1,000? If I said, I'll give you a grand if you can tell me each one of your pitches, and then tell me where in the box that you think you can throw that with the highest possibility that you're going to hit the spot, those are your defaults. So, like, Joey, for example, has 3 pitches, and I was like, okay, where do you want to throw your fastball? He's like, all right, down and away from righty. I'm like, you want to hit that bottom left corner? Yes. Okay, your changeup curve. We don't need to explain what the curve is. He made it up, but it's a good pitch, and it's a curveball. It's just goofy. And I was like, where do you want that? He's like, bottom of the zone, middle, maybe down and into a righty. But like that is I'm like, great. Cutter, where do you want to throw that? Up and into a righty. Great. Those are your 3 defaults. Like, you're getting so worried about everything else. Just go out there with the idea that you're going to hit those defaults. Don't worry about the hitters. And then as you get confident that you can hit those spots, then you expand off of it. So when I say I look at my spots, I've expanded mine because I feel like I'm very confident in my defaults. And then you start pitching after that. You're like, okay, I always have my default to go back to. Now let's apply this to each guy individually, and let's see how we expand. To who? Like, certain guys swing off the plate more. Certain guys chase only below the zone and never chase off. How does your breaking ball even move? Because what does a strike to ball look like? Is it in the zone and then off the plate? Is it in the zone below the plate? Is it in the zone then above the plate? Like, where is it? Where does that exist, and where can you conceivably do it based on how your ball moves?
Right.
Because if you're trying to throw a sweeping slider and you don't throw a sweeping slider, and you're like, why is no one swinging to this? It's because it's the ball the whole time, man. It's been off the plate the whole time. It was never over the plate. So that guy isn't going to swing at that because that's something he recognizes really well, as seen by his heat maps, because he never swings at it, right? Like, that kind of stuff. That's like the next level, I think.
And you know what I like most about your response is that we're talking about you preparing for games, and you're giving us how you're helping other teammates prepare, and you're basically telling your game plan and teaching it at the same time to other people. That's just so fantastic.
I feel like that, and there is a little bit of selfishness in there because it helps reinforce it for me too. It like makes me like, there's always a little bit like, I hope what I'm saying isn't bullshit. Pardon my French if I can't swear, but I hope I'm not BSing right now, that it actually works. And then when they go out and they do it, and you're like, I am helping. This is valid. Like this, because it's so weird when you're doing it and you're doing it for yourself. Yeah, it may work for you, but there's no telling whether or not it works for everybody. But what I try to do is try to make it as broad and as general as possible, like having a default, because that's something everyone has. You can think about it differently, however you want. All the pitches might be different, but having a default setting where you're like, wow, I know nothing about this team. At least you have a default that you can go back to. You're like, these are the things. I'm going to stick with these and then see what happens and learn from there and deal with whatever the consequences of that are. But so that is like a lot of the conversations we have. And Seth is very similar in that he's like, he wants to know how guys are swinging. He's just very specific. Like, how do these guys hit fastballs under 92 because he throws a sinker? And he's like, that moves this much, right? Because he's like, I don't throw a true sinker, I throw a two-seam, but it's slower, so I'm going to go by the velo and the movement. How do they swing at pitches like this? And then how do they swing at my four-seam 95 plus? So if I have a 95 plus, I know that I can go up here with this. So he like expands it, but it's like his criteria for what he's looking for, completely different than mine.
Now, I also saw on your YouTube channel that you're a little bit of a gamer. I have heard that some other major leaguers actually play MLB The Show to try out a game plan and see how accurate it can actually be. Have you learned anything from playing video games?
A little bit. Actually, now that I've been playing MLB The Show a lot more this offseason because I have a fun series where I made all my gaming friends in the game, and now they're a team, and we're trying to win the World Series with the Mariners, which is, like really hard to do in real life. So we'll see if we can do it visually. But now that I'm playing a lot, and then I've noticed that because I'm getting higher kind of in the difficulty, that it gets more and more realistic. like the pitches start to get faster and faster and look like they're in the zone, and then they're not. And certain guys have better, like Scherzer's really hard to hit for that reason. Not just because his stuff's like moving more physically, like in the game. It's literally the way they created the difficulty is by trying to mimic actual pitching and hand positions and stuff as much as possible. So I'm realizing, like, man, hitting's really hard, and strikeouts, like, it's a video game. I used to always play when I was a kid, like, on medium or semi-medium or easy, right?
I
And
played
that's 4
RBI
kinds of runs, and it
baseball
was
all the
easy.
years.
Yeah, there you go. And but now that I'm like trying to make it realistic, I do see a lot of the dichotomy there, and it's super interesting, and kind of fun, because sometimes I need to get out of my own head, like, okay, I made this guy to be like a sinker. Like I made one of the guys to be very similar to the way Halliday pitched, with like a curveball, sinker cutter, front door and back door, and constantly, right? Just painting in and out. And I have to get out of my own head that fastballs up aren't a thing for him, man. Just you don't throw fastballs up with him because he gets crushed. And I gave him a little two seam that's a little harder, so he can take that chance every once in a while. But I can't sit up there. But then I made me, and I made it in my image that I think of me in my head. And my four seam fastball is just swung and missed at constantly. The slider's kind of inconsistent, but really good break wise. And my splitter or a split changeup that I'm trying to kind of mess around with now is there, and my circle changeup is good, and I have good command of it, but doesn't move at all. Like that's how I perceive myself, and so I pitch accordingly, and see how good I can be. And it's funny because it shakes out pretty similarly to real life, which is pretty funny.
Yeah, technology is amazing. You mentioned a lot about your how you're teaching others on your team, but what have you specifically learned from your current teammates, if you can say? Maybe either an attitude, maybe a specific pitch, or maybe even just a specific grip of the ball.
Yeah. So, couple things. Mentality wise, Aaron Loop had an incredible year, but he wasn't doing anything. I think out of his own, like he didn't change anything from the past versions of himself. He just was executing his plan that he's been trying to execute for a long time a lot better than he has ever before. Then he kind of said that to me. He was just like, yeah, dude, I'm just aiming. I've been told all of my pitches move a lot, and they're like, he's in the top percentile and horizontal movement with everything. And when that's the case, he goes, I'm just trying to kind of throw it right down the middle and let the one move in to a righty and one move away, and vice versa. And I'm just, again, that's his default. That's how he defaulted, and he just let his stuff work. And so, like, that's kind of helped me reinforce again, like, I don't need to move my sights constantly around the zone. It can be more general, and it's just about execution at that point. If you're constantly hitting the spot, you're just going to have a great year. And so I focused a lot more on trying to make myself feel physically as good as I possibly could this year. Like, that was a huge focus for me. Consistently feeling like I have energy, feeling like my arms recovering, feeling like I'm ready to go every single night. That was a big focus for me as I move through. I'm always trying to figure out how to be as consistent as humanly possible. Whether that's you have a 3 and you give up a run every 3 games, but you're so consistent, right? I'd rather do that than be the guy who goes 10 scoreless and then gives up a 7 spot out of nowhere, and has no idea how to get anybody out that day. That's the nightmare. That's the season killer, as we call it in the bullpen. So, and then grips. I'm actually messing around with a little combination of Stroman's new kind of little split change and Carrasco's change. So just seeing what I can do there, because I throw extremely straight changeup. My highest carry, my lowest vertical movement pitch this year was a high changeup, higher than my fastball, which is just not acceptable to me. So, right. Just trying to get more of a depth or even a running option there, and messing around and doing some pitch design this offseason. So that's a good place to start, because both those guys have very good split changes that have a lot of depth on them.
Earlier this year, we actually had Stefania Bell on, and we discussed a couple of people who had Tommy John surgery. You're already 4 years removed from it. When did you start feeling yourself again? And do you think it was easier because you were relieving and not starting?
I would say that's a great question. I would say it started to come around in 2019. towards the end of 18, there were glimpses. I think it was back into like 94 average, 95. I think it got a 96 towards the end. I remember my first outing back on 18. I was like 91, 92, which is just not like, I saw that and I was like, oh no. But yes, I think that going into the pen allowed me to get there a little bit quicker. You have a little bit more, especially now the way the game's played. You just have a little bit more. That getting in that mindset set where you're just going to go out and kick up dust and like, give 100% on every single pitch, that allows your arm to bounce back or see what you have in the tank quicker than if you're a starter and that's not necessarily the way you pitch. And then the style of pitching too, it's like getting an opportunity to work through those things as a starter just isn't as easy to do these days because of the way that starters are handled. Like you're going to go 5 anyways, right? For a lot of times. And you're just not going to be able to face the guys third time through the order, and I don't think that lined up very well with me being able to go out and be super, hyper competitive, high emotion, and so I think that's why the bullpen kind of spoke to me for a lot of times. But actually, I got moved to the pen because I moved myself. A lot of people don't know that. I was coming off Tommy John. My velo was not back. It was 90, 91. And I wasn't throwing much harder than that, but I was definitely being able to get in the mid-90s. I wasn't doing it anymore at that point. And I was in AAA, and every other starter on that team was on the 40-man roster. They were all like 22, 23. I was 28. I'm like, they're not going to rush me up if I'm not looking great. So, I'm just going to I'm in danger of being stuck here if I don't do something else. And so I said, hey, put me in the pen. Let me get my velo back. We'll see what happens. I think 25 days later, Ryan Presley got traded as the 5th person traded that year at the deadline, and I got the call up then, and I haven't looked back since.
And since then, have you done anything differently to keep yourself healthy during the course of the year?
A variation of things. I've cut down a lot of things that I deemed unnecessary for me. I've spoken to a lot of different strength coordinators and people in that world with like how my body moves and why I am the way that I am. I'm not very mobile. That's something I have to focus a lot on in order to stay healthy. But I am just naturally strong. I don't have to lift weights like other guys do in order to produce the velocity that I have. And I lift weight. Very, very rarely. I do a lot of body weight stuff and just a lot of like range of motion movement. Like moving my body is what I do a lot of, but I don't do a lot of like the traditional weightlifting as a lot of people say, because I never saw any tangible benefit for me except getting tighter and being generally the same strength. And so those things have helped me stay healthy. Focusing really hard on after you're done throwing, what you're doing with your arm care, listening to your body. Recently, I've taken days off when I can. Jeremy Hefner is he's really, really great at being very clear when you're not going to pitch that night. And managing workload that way and making sure that guys can take mental breaks is the same. So whenever I got those days where I woke up and he's like, hey, you just take the day and relax your brain. You are not going to get in this one. I wouldn't throw. I'd be like, all right, let's just take a whole day off of throwing too and see how that feels. And that went a long way. The season's just a lot. It's just so much. And we can do less and less to stay healthy by other means. So you got to get the rest when you can get it.
Talking about rest, and sometimes relievers are called upon to pitch a couple days in a row, and sometimes they get an extended rest time. Maybe you could be out 7 days before you have two consecutive outings. Do you find having extra time with those extended rests to be good for you, bad for you? And does that differ between you and other relievers, or is it generally the same thing?
That varies wildly. I would say that for me, getting more than 3 days off. So if I don't pitch, if I get 3 games in a row, not pitching a 3-game series, that is pretty much my limit before I got to get off the mound again, because I'll get rusty. So I had a couple times where I got 5-6 days off, and I actually felt just as bad as I did the week before, just because you have more energy, but you don't necessarily have the feel or the adrenaline, or even like the recency bias of like having sometimes like throwing well recently snowballs into your next outing. Like you still have that feeling of like things are clicking. That's when guys get on rolls. And if that gets broken up because either you're just destroying a team, or like you're just not getting in for whatever reason, sometimes that can be a struggle.
Right.
And but I've been able to narrow it into a good like 3 days off. At that point, I either need to pitch in the game or I need to at least go warm up and get off the mound a little bit.
Right. How about that Tyler Matzik? He wants like three hours off between starts, between outings. That guy goes every day.
I don't understand. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I know he's riding heavy. He's riding high off the old playoffs. You can't fool me, bro. Talk to me in April how you're feeling after you just played into November. Also, congratulations. But no, it's that's that. I like that mindset. You know, I think he showed that a lot out there when he was out there playing too. You just got to have the screw it, we'll just deal with how we feel after. Like that's kind of what we do, and you try to get that to last for as long as humanly possible.
Right. All right. Well, we've come to the show. It's time for the Injury Guru's Trivia of the Week.
So we're actually going to do a little bit something different this time. We're actually going to play a game that comes from it's a Stump the Schwab style game called Leadoff. Stump the Schwab was a game show that was on ESPN2, for those who don't know, ESPN2 and ESPN Classic, from July 2004 to September 2006. The show featured 3 contestants trying to defeat Howie Schwab, ESPN's first statistician, in a sports trivia contest. The late and great Stuart Scott happened to be the host as well. Each topic list will have multiple answers. Actually, it's going to be 10 per question. Players will take turns naming the members of the list. Each correct answer is worth 1 point. If a wrong answer is given, that player is out for the rest of the topic. The player with the most of the points at the end of the 3 rounds wins. Any questions?
Am I playing?
You're going to play against each other. Yeah, I'm going to be the host. You guys are going to be playing against each other.
All right.
And it's geared toward
this. Let's get it.
It's geared toward relief pitchers. Just for some reason, that's what I did. So the first topic we're gonna do is top 10 NL relievers in holds last year. The top 10 leaders in holds from the National League last year. Trevor, you can go first.
Tyler Rogers.
Tyler Rogers is number 3. He had 30 holds. That's one.
All right, Blake Trinan.
Blake Trinan led the league with 32 holds.
I know who's in second. Luke Jackson.
That's correct. Luke Jackson had 31.
I'm not going to win this then, if you know that. Devin Williams.
Devin Williams was number 9 with 23.
AJ Minter.
Good one. AJ Minter was tied with him with 23.
Tyler Matzik.
Tyler Matzik, 24.
The Braves had a lot, dude.
Yeah.
If you're a good team, you had a lot. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there are 4 more.
Okay.
There's another giant. I know it. I don't know who it would be though.
I have my next.
Who else was the setup guy and was very good? There's so many teams that
I'll give you a hint, though.
And stuff.
I'll give you a hint. Think of the good teams. The teams that came close to the playoffs, that had the opportunity to have a lot of holds.
Okay. I have my next guess.
Close to the playoffs. I know there's no Mets. I know that for a fact.
By the way, you had 16. You had 16.
Yeah.
And you ranked 20th. You ranked 20th.
If you didn't say yourself, I wasn't going to guess you.
Yeah, this is for later, but yeah, what bullpen had the most freaking decisions? Because I bet you were pretty up there in that.
Yeah.
Yes, you were.
Come on. Quick. Fast. I'm trying to go through divisions. Kendall Graveman.
No, that is incorrect.
I'm going to go with Giovanni Gallegos.
Giovanni Gallegos was number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th with 26.
All right.
Ariel, can you name any more?
That's the guy in the Pirates. David Bednar?
Nope.
Not enough wins. Not enough wins. Yeah.
Other pitchers on this list: Genesis Cabrera with 28.
Ooh.
Brad Boxberger with 23. And Richard Blyer had 20 for the Miami Marlins.
Wow.
Yeah, I wouldn't have
Very
gotten those.
interesting.
Wouldn't have gotten those.
Next
Alright.
category is NL relief pitchers WAR top 10 for this past year. Top 10 in WAR NL relief pitchers for this year. Ariel, you can go first this time.
Josh Hader.
Number 1.
Giovanni Gallegos.
Number 2 at 2.2. Josh Hader at 2.6.
I'm gonna go with Craig Kimbrell.
Number 3 at 2.1.
Is Aaron Loop on here? 10, maybe? Close. He's got to be close. Aaron Loop?
Yes, he's on the list. He is ranked.
Let's go.
I have
Wow.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th with a WAR of 1.6.
I'm gonna go with Kenley Jansen.
Kenley Jansen is right above Aaron Loop with 1.8.
Blake Trinan.
Blake Trinan also tied with Kenley Jansen 1.8. That was a good bullpen.
I'm gonna take your teammate Edwin Diaz.
Edwin Diaz, number 4 with a WAR of 2.
Dang. That boy Shug.
It's getting thin now.
Melanson?
Melanson did not make the list. Not the top 10.
Luke Jackson?
I'll go with
have that one.
the Braves closer. What's his name?
Wilson.
Will Smith.
Will Smith did not make the list.
Oh, really?
Pitchers you missed. Devin Williams, 1.4
Okay.
WAR, and AJ Minter and Tyler Rogers tied at 1.3.
Ooh.
Okay, so right now the score is Ariel, you have 9, and Trevor, you have 7. And Trevor, you go first in this category. This is the completely random category. This is most wins in relief by an NL relief pitcher. Top 10. This is a completely random category because it's just completely random.
Jury's Familia.
Jerry's Familia was number 3 with 9.
With 9 wins.
I'm gonna go with Trevor May.
Trevor May made
Yes.
the list at number
Yes.
you had 7 wins.
That's
That was tied for the top 10.
I figured Ruben would put you on one of these lists at least.
Yeah, gotta be. Yeah. Who else? Someone had the number 1. It was over 10, or it had to be 10. And
Number one had 12.
Whoa.
Oh, who was it? Oh my God, I seen this. I think they were in the playoffs. Were they in the They were a playoff team.
Yes.
Was it Tyler Rogers?
Tyler Rogers is on the list. He also had 7.
I'm gonna go back to Devin Williams here.
Devin Williams had 8.
Yep.
AJ Minter had a lot, didn't he? AJ Minter.
Is that your
Yeah,
final answer?
Yeah.
That is incorrect. He is not on the list.
I'm gonna go with Giovanni Gallegos.
He is also not on the list.
Ah, jeez.
The leader in NL wins for the National League this past year, Brent Suter with 12.
Brent Suter,
There it was.
wow.
Yeah, we played
Alex
him right
Reyes
at the end. That's what
had
I saw.
10.
I know Kittredge
7
had a lot in the AL.
And Chris Stratton, Daniel Bard, Archie Bradley, Jose Alvarado all had 7 along with you, Trevor, and Tyler Rogers.
Oh wow.
So final score is 11-9. Ariel, you won
Oh
this.
wow. All right.
But how about this? A bonus 3-point question. What was Aaron Loop's favorite beer post-victory?
I don't know this.
It's Busch Light.
That's correct.
He had a neon sign in his locker. That's pretty hard to miss.
That's it. He
Oh,
was
look,
on-
I
he was on
won!
He was on his
Totally not
he was-
rigged.
every Zoom he was on. You saw that can of beer there. So yeah.
That's right. That's right. I didn't pay too much attention to it, but yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. That was great, moving. I hope you enjoyed that, Trevor.
That was great. I love that. That was
Yeah.
awesome.
I want to talk a little bit about analytics, going more about numbers here. But you talk a lot about analytics on your show, the Trevor May Show on YouTube, and you've developed this stat called CQR. Could you explain to everybody what that is and how it actually helps you become a better pitcher?
Yeah, so CQR, and I almost put a plus at the end, but I realized that actually has a point, and I didn't have a point for it. I just wanted it to look cool. CQR is
Well, the plus, of course, is just where the average is 100 for the league.
exactly.
It's just scaled.
Exactly. I'm like, that doesn't apply here. You
Right.
can't make your thing look cooler, Trevor. Just go with CQR. So CQR is command quality ratio. That's how I call it. What I call it, and basically it is the number of times that the standard for me in my head is I go back and watch all my outings. I know pretty much the moment I walk off the field how many pitches I threw, and how many of those pitches were. Basically, did I execute my command plan? Where did I throw it where I wanted to? Did I execute my plan well? This is within. I usually use a standard of within 2 inches of the spot because pitching's hard and it's not easy. You don't just stick it every time. But I would give myself a 1 out of 1 in that situation. If I'm in a spot where I don't quite hit the spot, but I do miss in a low risk, high reward way, aka 0-2 fastball up and away, and I miss above the zone to where it's very low chance of it being hit really hard, but also very high chance of it being swung and missed at. That would be a quality. I'd give myself a half a point on that. And the same thing with, for example, you get 0-2, I throw a fastball. I'm trying to go up and away in the corner of the zone or off the plate, and I throw it right down the middle. He still swings and misses. That's still 0 because I didn't execute the plan. I didn't execute the pitch. It was a way for me to separate my pitching performance with the traditional statistical results because there's just too many variables, as you guys very well know, that go into ERA and everything, honestly.
Sure.
And most things are, especially for a reliever, more than almost any other position, everything's out of my hands except for when I throw the ball. So even winning and losing most of the time. So we have the least amount of effect on that, or at least unless we struggle. So basically, I would go through and I would relive it again, and I would be as kind of cold and calculated about it as possible and objective, and give myself an honest percentage ratio, if you will. So built out that ratio through the season, and I realized that I found a pattern. I was looking for patterns mostly. I'm like, so where's the line where I'm having more tradition, like the results are good as well, as opposed to more often than not the results are bad if my CQR is below a certain percentage. And so I started to notice that as around 60% for me. That's that number, that line is going to change because of the aforementioned stuff. I can get away with a lot of other things that other guys might not be able to, and there's also guys that can get away with even more than I can. So like their ratio might be lower that they're aiming for, and their command isn't as good because they either throw really hard or they're violent or whatever it is, they're effectively wild, if you will. So different factors can do these things, but you got to get a sample size to figure out where that line is. I found that 60% was kind of a target. If I wanted to be above 60% on average, I think that will translate into a very high. That would be a better year than normal for me, which is what I'm always trying to accomplish. I would like to improve every single year. And I ended up being about 57%. I started doing it in May, like actually had this idea and started to track it. But the exciting part, and something I'm actually working on a video right now about, is I actually do a lot of tracking my athletic data to my physical data with a Whoop and with an Aura Ring. I wear them both when I pitch. They give you tons of data, and I started to attach my ability to command the ball with how I felt that day. It gives me a pretty good measure of how well did I sleep the night before. Did that produce a lower ability to throw the ball where I wanted to? And it turned out that yes, it definitely does. Not in the biggest way ever, but like it was a 6-7%, on average jump, which is a lot.
Could be enough, yeah.
That's a pitch plus of a 20 pitch outing. If you just need one more pitch really well commanded, and if you can't get that because you're tired, then that's enough to get that extra 2 hours of sleep the night before. So we've been tracking that stuff, and I'm actually working with one of our analytics guys at the Mets, who is just kind of trying to attach actual biomechanics data and movement of the pitches as well. Did your break on your slider go down also when you weren't commanding? How was your stuff moving more or less or weirder or different? Was that affecting the command, or was your physical data affecting your movement. How are these things correlating with each other? And logic says that, yeah, of course they're going to correlate, but how much do they correlate? So that's the really interesting part to me. I haven't really come up with the conclusions yet, and you got to stay tuned for the YouTube video. But it was a really, really nerdy thing to do. I did it in that I was done pitching. What I organized all this stuff the second to last day of the season. Basically, Hef told me, "Hey, you're done. Like, you just pitched 3 out of 4, and we're done in 2 days. So we're just not going to pitch." I'm like, "Okay, cool. I'm going to work on this spreadsheet." And that's what CQR is. I came up with that. I think it's a really interesting way. I think that kids can just do it at home too. That was another kind of motivation for me. If you think about command as the most important thing when you're young, I think that could take you really far in baseball. So I thought it would be a really interesting thing to teach, because I would love to teach kids more when I'm done playing or towards the end of my career too. And I thought that would be an interesting thing that they could also do, because you don't need like a track man to do it. You just need it behind the camera, or behind the pitcher camera. And out in center field, you could do it for a Little League game. So it was interesting. It was an interesting concept. And I think I think there's something there. I think that it's going to be really helpful moving forward.
Well, I like CQR for 3 reasons. One, because it's nerdy, which we're nerds here, so that always scores points. Number 2, and this is a mathematical reason why it's good, is that, ERA, the divisor is innings, or, even if you're talking about strikeout rate, it could be per at bat or per plate appearance. But when you're talking about at the level of per pitch, that is there is more data, because the sample size is so much larger. Things converge a lot faster. Like, if you have a whole season, you pitched this year, you threw 1,117 pitches. Okay, that's a pretty big sample size, as opposed to saying just 63 innings. The sample size is bigger, and you can get a much bigger feel for how it's going in season, right? Like, the stats become meaningful after just a couple of outings, not a whole season. ERA takes much longer to stabilize. So I like that for that reason. And the other thing is, it sounds very similar to a metric that I created called WPDI. And the thing about WPDI is where we're tracking 3 questions. Do you pitch? Is a pitch in the zone or out of the zone? Did the batter swing or not? And did they make contact? And just those 3 questions, there's different possibilities. Like, you can throw out of the zone with a swing and a miss. You can throw in the zone and no swing. Just looking at the percentage of pitches that you throw in each zone and comparing them to other major league players actually tells a lot. So, for example, you're in the 95th percentile of in the zone swung on and missed. Like, only 1 out of 20 pitchers in Major League Baseball have less of a percentage of pitches that are in the zone and swung on and missed, just like you. That's something you're executing well. You also do very well of out of the zone, swung on and no contact. To me, that's even better, because if you're generating swings out of the zone, I mean, they're not going to square up on that as well. So you're in the 85th percentile of that one. So that's a statistic that I made up that just tracks what percentage of the pitchers are going to which locations, and are they swinging and making contact or not, and that tells a lot. So I think there's some corollaries between your stat and what I have. So that's why I enjoyed hearing about that.
I love it. I love that too, because I think that what would be valuable as, for example, to an actual team, when you say those things, is it gives you an idea of, especially if you have it on guys in AA, high A, low A, that aren't necessarily your top prospects that you're monitoring very closely, but you're like, for some reason, there's outliers here in these zones, and they're always swinging. What about? And then we know enough now about movement and biomechanics and physics of how baseball moves and why guys are swinging and stuff, and why they don't swing at other things. You know more about that it can then lead you to concrete data on those things that then you can find and say, let's develop you with these strengths in mind. And that's, all I'm telling you right now is that's what the Rays do. And that's, and that's why they, I am a player and I don't like this part of things, but that's why they just don't have to pay anybody, but they get the results and then, let you go make your money from another team. That's just kind of how they've been doing it, but it's working for them. And they figured something out. Well, and everyone's searching for their own version of that based on, the resources they have at their disposal. But it's pretty kind of foolproof way to approach things. It's a really good process.
Right. And, and one thing the Rays have done in the past 2 years or so is they get pitchers who have very weird or very different arm slots or angles, and they're coming in all the way from the left, all the way from the right. And, something that you've talked about, and maybe you can explain a little bit, is that, generating horizontal movement on pitches is a very large key to generating whiffs. And it's probably more important than vertical movement up and down. Could you explain why you think that
now, yes,
horizontal?
in the last couple of years.
Yeah, okay.
And it's hilarious that you said that because the word sweeper has now become like extremely Googled from baseball people. Sweeping breaking balls, hard, like Blake Trinan going from throwing tons and tons of cutters to the bigger moving slider, changing things to get the bigger movement, the Chaz Rowe effect, right? And guys are going for that because people adjust, and everyone's throwing fastballs up, and the complement to a fastball up is a depth breaking ball or a depth. So people throwing crazy amounts of breaking balls. They're seeing so many breaking balls. They're seeing so many fastballs up that you're like, this is all I get. This is all there is now, like in the baseball. So now hitters are starting to adjust a little bit, and they're not being as effective.
Cat and mouse game there.
Cat and mouse game. So now the adjustment is, okay, now we want the strike to ball to be as much off the plate as it was below now. So the thing about pitches off the plate, like away from a righty, a slider breaking away from a righty, guys that will chase that, you physically can't hit it. So like there's no foul ball happening there. There's no fouling it off. There's no fighting it off. And that is that's like the ultimate absolute, result is like when the ball isn't touched at all, it's just a strike. Like there's nothing can happen after that. And so you want that. And then what complements that? The opposite movement. So it's not sinker as much as it's laminar or two seam, or it's something that's running way in on guys. But the weird complement thing of that is like guys who throw that, you just generally get balls off the barrel, but you do give up more contact than the, perceived upward movement, the rise ball per se. That gets more swing and misses, but it also is hit harder when it is hit. So like this is the cat and mouse we're playing now. And I'm not going to lie, the sweeper idea, I've never thrown anything with a ton of horizontal movement, except for a cutter I threw when I was like a rookie, or like my slider. It was a cutter. It was like just a little baby slider. And it actually had more horizontal than depth. And it's the first pitch. I had to look way back to 2014 to look it up and see that. But nothing I've thrown up to that has ever had, let's say, a baseball savant number that was red. In horizontal. It's always blue because I'm such a north to south guy, which still plays and still will play. Like it's not even something like it's the fastball up is always going to be something that's like I see it and it's the big eyes, I can hit that. Oh no, I can't. Like that's the effect of the swing, and that's not going to go away. Hitters are always getting big eyes when they see something they can hit. So it's going to be there. It's just the guys that are able to foul it off, or at least like when I come into a game in the eighth inning, the Blue Jays did this to me this year. Through first outing against them, got 2 punch outs, hold, and a really good inning. Next time I pitched against them, it was like Teoscar and Bo and all those guys, and they were just hunting heaters up. And all 3 of them got singles on fastballs up out of the zone. And I was like, man, I should have made the adjustment a little bit earlier today. And Simeon actually did too. So I was like, maybe I should have known that immediately when Marcus Simeon's swinging at something on his chin and he hits it, because it's just not his bread and butter usually. I should have known at that point that the game plan was, hey, let's take this away from him, right? And so now guys are countering that with that sweeping breaker. And it's really interesting to me, and I'm going to see if I can throw one.
I was at that game, actually, on the Sunday one.
Oh, yeah.
In Toronto, yeah.
And we won.
Yes, we did.
You know who came in and saved me?
McNeil. McNeil got the hit in that game.
And McNeil, yeah. Yes. But a loop got us out of that that inning too. So
and I think Rich Hill started the game also.
Yes, Rich first game over.
Because I was at the game also.
Oh, that's right. You were a Ruve. That's
I think I recorded. I think Alonso hit a homer to left, so I did record that. I saw that. So
there you go.
But in comparison to movement, how important is pitch velocity and spin rate to you specifically?
It's fairly important. Spin axis has become more of the spin efficiency has become more of my focus because you don't necessarily. I feel like I feel like you get diminishing returns on, or maybe the opposite of whatever that is, increasing returns, the higher the spin rate goes. So if you're not able to get your breaking ball up over 3,000, like, 25 to 3,000 is kind of generally similar, but once you get above that, that's when it starts to become like this outlier pitch. And so if you're sitting at like 2550, you're like, well, how could I get 500 more spin rate? There is one way to do it, but we don't do that anymore, guys. So because they take our glove after every inning. So I'm not as worried about it as much, and I'm just like, this is kind of where I'm at. Maybe I can get a little bit of how can I make this as efficient possible, because I'm above average on most things. Like I'm above average with the changeup, actually with slower spin, above average with the fastball. It's funny, the day we got they started checking for 6 stuff was the highest spin rates I've had all year, which was just a weird. Our analytics guys were like, "What do you do? What happened?" I'm like, "I have no idea. I'm so sorry. It was just I felt good. Maybe I was a little mad too that I knew I was going to get checked. I don't know." But efficiency is definitely it.
How often do you speak to the analytics guys on the team?
Oh, I hang out with them all the time. They're my buddies. I could definitely. I'm like, if I wasn't a player, and I went to college but didn't end up being like good at didn't end up like having the option of playing professional baseball, that I could have very easily been in an analytics department. Just because I've always loved math. It's not. The math isn't as involved as other jobs would have been. It's more straightforward. It's just a lot of different numbers and the ways that they interact with each other. That's super interesting. As you guys, you probably share that with me pretty clearly. And I just like being able to explain things and being like, this is actually what's going on. And I love how guys are embracing and finding different ways to improve themselves and being able to tailor things for specific people. And being a player too, there's always that tangible element from that. Like, bring it all the way back to that story at the beginning I told. There had to be something in my head that clicked there. That's something that exists as a player. Like, there was no like having a general understanding of how things are moving and what could give me those strikeouts. But that's as far as it went. I still had to do it and able to do it. There's an intangible part of the game still. So I try to inject that when I have these conversations as much as possible, because it's very, very easy to say, like, for example, hopefully he won't kill me for talking about this, but I have a cousin-in-law who is playing Division I baseball right now, and he is a redshirt sophomore, 6'3", left-handed, 235 pounds. He walked on there, but because he over COVID, he rose his fastball from 87 to 94. Like, because he's a big dude, and I helped him with a long toss routine. He wasn't a big long toss guy. I'm like, dude, you want to throw hard, you got to throw hard. And so he got that. He got on the team, and it was great. And I hadn't talked to him since he played his first season, and he was just like, man, he told me about an outing where they had him throw only curveballs. Like, literally every pitch, he threw 2 innings of only curveballs, and he had a great outing and had a couple strikeouts, but he's got a mid 70s curveball, and I'm like, and he's like, it went well, but and I was like, you're not happy because you see yourself as a power guy and you're getting pigeonholed at 19. And so I was like, and I know that comes a little bit from, it might come a little bit from, it might come a little bit from, in college you got to win, and we know a lot about like you decide what your best pitch is, and then you use it to go get your results in college. But you're also young, and there has to be a development element of it too. Right. And and with a very heavy like analytics approach to development and things, sometimes the long term, like, it's very this is what happens in the past and this is what it shows us, so this is what's going to be our best predictor of the future. But there is at what point is a player done doing new stuff that's never been seen from him? Like, where is that line? At what age, right? Or what level of base? That's an interesting question that I don't think sometimes can get lost when you're like, oh wow, I should let you throw your fastball because you need to get in. It could be high 90s. It could be. That's in there. I can see it. And if you never throw it, you'll never see if you got there or not. So, and there's no number that'll tell you that unless you've done it before. You know, you guys understand what I'm saying? It's very, very much based on past performance. And it's very interesting. I feel like I have a different view on that than maybe a lot of people in the analyst community that maybe haven't played, 7 years of Major League Baseball.
Right. Well, I mean, as a coach, I know that that's something where you want to develop the kid, but if the kid is pitching a certain pitch well, you want to go with it and win the game. But yeah, you know what I'm talking about. So
it's a tale old as time. It's just now there's analytics attached to it that give you even a better confidence in that pitch is their best one. Like it used to be like, obviously it's your best one. We watch you do it. It's awesome, right? But now it's like, but there's also like science tells us it actually is the best one too. So that's just. Now we have to throw it, right? That's a very easy connection to make. It's really interesting, and it takes how you approach those things to continue to develop or like get opportunities is like it's just like a different approach to before. You used to have to just prove it out there, and now there's like you have to be like vocal and you have to like pursue it yourself. It's not just it's really interesting, but I think it's actually long term. Especially like with young guys throwing 5 innings, right? A lot of young guys coming up, they're just throwing 5 innings immediately. Like you can't face the team three times.
Yeah.
And those young guys have to go and be like, I am a horse and I am an ace. I can throw CGs. You got to let me do it. Like those guys have to do that now. They're not like it's not going to happen unless they do that.
Yeah.
But I guess true aces would do that, right? So it's going to be really interesting the next 5 years in the major leagues. All these young guys coming up.
Corbin Burns winning the Cy Young and his third time through the order, 4.41 ERA.
Yeah,
I
mean, it's that. It's the same thing as like, of course, fastballs are hit harder than break. Like, of course it is. That's logic, right? Like you face a team the third time through, aggregately, even the bigger the sample size for that gets, probably the bigger that discrepancy gets. I bet you the more innings they throw the third time around, the more it separates from those first two for a lot of guys, just because, of course, there's fatigue and there's the third timer. All these things are there that weren't there for the first two things. Of course, like, yes, that makes sense.
Right.
It's just that's when the art of managing and managing a team and playing the game as players comes in. That's when the art of reaching down deep and getting the job done comes in. That's when a guy who's extremely confident versus a guy who's not extremely confident. That's when they're both on even playing field and all they have to do is go based on their literal emotions at that time. Who wins? That's the beauty of this. That's one of the beautiful things about sport that I love. And I just love two guys with nothing left, where there's no numbers now are going to tell you what's going to happen. You're just going to have to see who wants it more.
Yeah,
they can love that stuff. So
that is the heart of baseball. Yeah,
and I hope we preserve that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Hey, we've got a lot of mailbag questions that were sent in. Really great response from everybody. So, yeah, let's do a couple. Some of these are quick answers, so let's get through them. Always Honest Abe. Actually, I think I used to play softball with him when this guy lived in New York. You're talking about the change curve, and obviously I'm not a major league pitcher, but my pitch is the change screwball. Maybe the change screw? Yeah. Good pitch, anyways. Very effective in my league. It's all relative to your league, of course. So here's his questions. First, who is the batter you least want to face with the bases loaded in a tie game?
It is a very, very close between these two guys. I would say as close as it could be, but Juan Soto is no one. I know that's low-hanging fruit, but he's just like, can't strike him out. He's going to put the ball in play, and he's very good at hitting the ball very hard. And you're not going to fool him. And then Freddie Freeman is right behind him for those same reasons.
Actually, Jerry Blevins said the same thing. He didn't want to face Freddie Freeman. I think Freddie Freeman had a 400 batting average against the lefty specialist, Jerry Blevins.
Yeah. When you're a lefty specialist and the guy's left-handed, and you're like, I can't get this left-handed guy out, and you're like, what's the point of me?
Right.
Zach Duke says the same thing about Joe Mauer. He's like, loved it, guys. They bring me in. I go in. I give up a single to Joe, and then I go get pulled. It was great.
Yeah, and unfortunately for you, Soto is in your division. So that's
they're all in my division.
Next question. That is true. Well, Freeman, you never know. He'll probably stay in Atlanta. But
probably.
Why number 65?
Everyone's like, it's because you're 6'5", right? I'm like, no. Honestly, I got it. They gave it to me my first spring training. I stuck with it. The number I've always wanted was 54. I've been a big number 7 my whole life, and then I was like, you know what? That's not a starting pitcher number. Then I was in the 50s all through the minors because that's the biggest jersey on the team, and that's how that works. And 54 is when I was able to get several years in a row. So I was like, and I always liked Ichiro and Randy Johnson, 51. So I was like 51 if it's available. But I've had 54, so let's stick with 54. I get to the big leagues, Irvin Santana, 54. No shot. And then so I'm like, okay, well, I got 65. This is my rookie number. I'll try to get it later. And then Sergio Romo, 54. I'm like, okay, I just don't think this is going to happen. So basically, I was stuck with 65 all the way through with the Twins. They asked me, the Mets are like, hey, you want to change your number? Like off your rookie number? And I go, Kate, my wife, I was like, Kate, what number should it be? She's like, 65, Trevor. I have a jean jacket with 65 in the back.
There
You're
you
not
go.
changing your number. So I'm like, you know what? I'm 6'5". It makes sense. 65 is my number. They gave it to me. I have an identity now with it, and we're gonna stick with it. And
Good choice.
you know what?
Good
No one's ever gonna have it on a team I'm on. And then it's
Right.
funny, Gesellman had it, and I'll never forget. I texted him, hey, bro, can I have your number? He's like, oh my God, please take it. Can I have 44?
Wow.
And I go, sure. And I asked Kev, our equipment guy, I was like, can he have 44? He's like, yeah, sure. I was like, yeah, dude, you got it. He's like, oh, you're the best. I was like, oh, I thought he was going to have to give you money or something. All right, cool. Thanks, man. He wanted to get rid of that thing like the plague. So now I got it.
Wow.
So here we are.
Well, Lindor has my number 12, so I'm not getting that on the Mets.
Yeah, probably not.
No. Do you prefer day games or night games?
Do I prefer day games or night games? Generally, night games. I like consistent sleep timing.
Right.
So
right.
I like, we had a stretch where we had like 10 straight night games. Now the Mets get night game getaway days just about every series. So, but that's okay because you could sleep in. You can catch up on your sleep. You can't catch up on sleep for a day game. Like once you're up, you're up. There's no catching up anywhere. So limiting that a little bit is a little bit better for me. But in terms of actually playing the game, I actually like playing in the sunlight. Like I enjoy the game. I feel like I have more energy when it's sunny. So it's a weird two-sided coin, but I would say generally night games.
Right. Okay, Anxious 2 asks, what is your favorite inning to pitch in? Do you like the 5th, 6th, 7th, etc.?
The 8th or the 9th.
Right.
I love the big like the big, lock it down inning. I like the I talk to my friends and stuff about it. Like our whole day is ramping up all day. Like mentally,
Right.
we wake up, we're like, I got to pitch tonight, and then everything is like pointing towards that moment. And there's stress involved, but there's also like excitement and apprehension a little bit. Like I hope you have to fight it, but and you hate it all day, and then you go pitch. You're like, I love that. Like it's so weird. That's the thing I'll miss most when I'm done playing. But I really love going out, shutting the door because there's no better like relief and a feeling of accomplishment when you do that job. And generally, it's just get 3 outs. So it's like not the hardest job in the world. You can fall into success sometimes there too, and that's kind of nice. So. What the flip side of that coin is, though, if you make one mistake, then everyone will hate you forever. But it's just you just walk that tightrope. That's the part. But I like being able to. I like picking up Shug when he has a day off. I like getting those opportunities. I've talked about this a lot. I think that being a reliever and like locking in and wanting to be a reliever, you should want to close because I think that will make you the best version of yourself. If that makes sense.
Right.
Do you feel like you pitch better in high leverage situations?
Yes, and I would say that not that I don't pitch well in no leverage, because I'm pretty good at faking that leverage in my head, because I just don't like to fail or lose. But no one does, but I really don't. But I would say I would take pride in my ability, at least the last few years, to strand runners, inherited runners, and my own. I'm really good at like. Giving up a single and a double and then, getting out of it somehow. And I had quite a few of those this year too. Just traffic on the bases makes me better sometimes.
Right. All right, here's one. Can you tell us about your love for cats? And does your wife send you pictures of your cats when you're on the road like Ruvain's wife does? What?
All the time.
Really?
You
All
get it
the
too?
time.
Okay, good.
You get that too, Ruvain?
I get it. I get it all the time. When I'm at work, I'm sitting at my desk and I get a picture of a cat doing something. Yes, I always get that all the time.
Yeah.
Wow.
I do it all the time. We have 2 cats. Mostly because one of our older cat, her name is Elsie. She's 14. She was my wife's cat in high school. So
Oh, wow.
she came to live with us when we first moved in together. Her mom was like, "Take the cat," and so now we have the cat. And I was like, I grew up with cats. I had a dog. I had several dogs. We lived a little bit in rural Washington, so like we had like 4 cats that would just run out into the woods and come back at night for food, and then sadly like. Every once in a while, they wouldn't come back because we just lived in the woods. So, but I always had cats around. So I love cats. But then baseball life, and it's so funny because a lot of baseball players are like, dogs are the way. Except I'm like, yeah, but you got to wake up at 7 and go. Like that doesn't equate with the baseball life,
Jeff
man.
McNeil with his dogs, right?
Yeah, like you're getting up to feed them and stuff. They're great. Dogs are amazing. I cannot wait to get a dog. But with the baseball life, cats are just easier. Like you put the food out, they feed themselves. They poop in a box. You don't have to take them outside. They don't. It's just lower maintenance. You can leave them alone for 2 or 3 days, and they're okay. I wouldn't recommend longer than that, but they're okay generally.
Don't do it longer than that. It's not a good idea.
Maybe 2 days a weekend.
Yeah.
Go to Vegas. Yeah. That's Vegas trip. Just think of it the Vegas trip rule. A cat could survive fine in a Vegas trip, and travel. Traveling's huge. So we each take one as a carry-on the flight to spring training, and we each take one on a flight home from New York after.
Oh, wow.
And that's how it works. That we can't have 3 though, because then we'll be outnumbered, and we can't take that many cats on a plane. So,
Right.
and I've always played like 3,000 miles from my home. So. That's just the way. That's mostly why. But we added it. We added a cat. His name's Donnie. He's 1 now, and he's a British Shorthair, and he's so fat and huge, and he weighs 3 times as much as Elsie now. So he's 21 pounds, and she's 7.
Wow.
So
Wow.
let's just say when he wants, she doesn't play. She's 14. She just hasn't played in 6 years. And when he wants to play, yeah, he wins. Yeah, he wins. So. But yeah, love him. And he's so cute. They're just so cute, and they're always like. Whenever I'm gone, when I lay on the couch, I have to shift my body all the time because I'm always uncomfortable because I'm an athlete and that's what happens. And my wife can sit still for 30 minutes, so they just lay on her and then ignore me.
You just have to make sure if you're taping anything, like you're doing a podcast or something, or taping a video, they're not near your computer because they will walk all over it and screw everything up.
Oh yeah, and you should see my cable management right now. He is not allowed in here because he'll see all the stuff dangling. And be like, there's so many toys under there, and he will just pull everything out. So
Yes, correct.
yeah, I have to shoo him away. But fortunately, I'm always talking on my mic, and he thinks someone's here, so he doesn't come in here very often. He thinks like there's a stranger, and he doesn't want to. So he's always hiding. But so that's the benefit.
Last question here. Besides the Beat the Shift podcast, of course, what are your favorite pod streams to listen to or watch?
Ooh, great pods and streams. I have been listening to this Smart List podcast. Like I've listened to every episode, I think. That is Jason Bateman.
Oh my
Sean.
God. I just had that conversation at work today, and
Yeah.
somebody just brought that. I never heard of it before today, and there you go.
Will
Wow.
Arnett, Jason Bateman, and Sean. Sean's last name. Sean from Will and Grace.
Right,
3 actors.
right.
Oh my God, the hard heavy hitters they have on this is incredible. They just had Tom Hanks, Jeff Daniels,
And they don't know who the guests are. Like only one of them knows.
One of them knows, yeah.
Right,
One
right.
of them pulls out the old, I'm Jason Bateman, come on my podcast, and then they go. And but I love just the same way that people love hearing about like our superstitions and our day in the life and stuff. I love hearing about actors and the same thing for them, all these people and how similar they are and to their characters that they play. It's hilarious. So it's always really, and they do a good job, and it's funny and whatever. But and then my wife, actually, she's a huge podcaster, and we have a routine when we're getting ready for bed is where she puts on one of her podcasts. So lots of like educational stuff, like the history of fashion. For whatever reason, I'm like, I don't know why I'm into this, but I'm so into this. Explaining like why pockets exist. Like that's so. Where did pockets come from, and how they got to where they are? That's so interesting. I don't know why. I didn't never thought about it before, but it is. Things you missed in history class. It's the same. Like I think they have overlapping hosts, and it's just literally they pick an event, and then they break it down for you.
Yeah,
And it's just
the untold story.
Untold story, exactly. And another just like, and as a podcaster myself, I'm also like, what an awesome format. You're never going to run out of stuff, ever. You could have 100,000 episodes and people will still listen. Man, I should have thought of that.
Right.
Well, I'm definitely going to have to check out the podcast with Jason Bateman now. I got 2 recommendations. Smart List. Unbelievable, yeah. I will check that out. That brings us to the end of the show. Before we go, well, first of all, this was a fantastic episode, Trevor. Really appreciate you coming on and giving us your insight into personal and into all the pitching. We do a lot of analytics here, and you fit right in. Apparently after baseball, you're going to become an analyst, is what you're telling us here, right?
Maybe, or a pundit. I mean, I would love to be. I would love to be a pundit that had a little bit of a idea what I'm talking about with the analytics. We're getting there a little bit, but
there you go.
Sometimes that's lacking a bit. I did have, before we just. If I had one question for you, how does it feel being part of Fangraphs and possibly being a metric used to in arbitration to get guys paid?
Yeah,
that's so interesting.
That's kind of neat. It's a great feeling when I heard it. Wow, actually, stuff that we work on here is actually being right into the system. Like they're almost going to directly be involved and calculated off it. It's a great feeling. I listened the very first time that my ATC projections were up on Fangraphs, and it said projections by Ariel Cohen. I'm like, oh my god, wow! I'm on the site and people are looking at it. It's it really is a great feeling. So definitely.
But it's a lot of pressure also. It's a lot of pressure.
A little bit of pressure. Yeah. And you know what? Some guys could just be really mad.
Well,
why is my F4 so low? Please, it's arbitration here.
I never thought about it from the player's perspective. I just do my thing, and computers and algorithms don't really have feelings. I just do my numbers, and I don't sit there and is this guy going to feel bad if I project him low? I don't really do that.
Yeah, well. And when it starts to affect your money, you start to care real fast. But yeah, it's very. I thought that was so unprecedented and cool. So I thought I'd just bring it up last year. But
yeah,
anyway,
there you go.
Continue what your outro you were doing.
No, awesome. No, again, I wanted to thank you. Everyone who's listening, you can follow Trevor on Twitter at I am Trevor May. Is there anything else you want to promote? Maybe your shows and other podcasts that you're doing?
Sure. I actually run a podcast called the May Contain Action Podcast. It is myself and my friend Action Jackson, as he is known on the internet on Twitter or Twitch, because in gaming everyone's got a screen name, and we bring on other creators and we talk about creating content, YouTube, all that kind of stuff. It's all really interesting and fun, and we've had some really interesting people on there. And I'm actually working on a format for the Trevor May podcast. It's come in and out a little bit over the years, just kind of breaking down stuff very similar to what we did today, just like concepts and things, how I prepare. We're working on a format for that, so that will be sustainable through a season, because as you can imagine, time comes at a premium there, and I would love to be able to do something fairly consistently that would be fun to listen to. So look out for those two things, and other than that, I mean, if you follow me on Twitter, you'll get a front seat for 100 other projects that I'm working on at the moment.
Definitely. And definitely check out the Trevor May Baseball channel on YouTube. Absolutely fantastic stuff. Trevor breaking down pitches, other pitchers, himself, and goals for the year. And it's just absolutely worth a listen. One of the best baseball YouTube channels out there. So everyone check that out.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Ruvain, why don't you just tell us where we can see your stuff?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at MLB Injury Guru, where I tweet out injury updates throughout the course of the season and the off-season. I'm going to be going over some off-season injuries and what to expect from the players in the upcoming season, starting mid-December. And I also have a weekly injury article on Rotoballer during season.
All right, my name's Ariel Cohen, and you can see my work over at Fangraphs. The ATC projections will be out in just a couple of short months. Of course, according to Fantasy Pros, the ATC projections were the most accurate projections for the last 2 years in a row since they've been reviewing my work. So definitely worth checking out. That'll be up just in time for your fantasy drafts coming up soon. All right, well, once again, thanks again to Trevor May for joining the show. And from all of us here at Beat the Shift, we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Beat the Shift podcast presented by Fangraphs. Follow us on Twitter at beat_shift_pod.